James VI and I.
James VI and I was King of Scotland as James VI from July 24, 1567 and King of England and Ireland as James I from the union of the Scottish and English crowns on March 24, 1603 until his death. The kingdoms of Scotland and England were individual sovereign states, with their own parliaments, judiciary, and laws, though both were ruled by James in personal union. He succeeded to the Scottish throne at the age of 13 months, after his mother Mary, Queen of Scots, was compelled to abdicate in his favour. 4 different regents governed during his minority, which ended officially in 1578, though he did not gain full control of his government until 1583. In 1603, he succeeded the last Tudor monarch of England and Ireland, Elizabeth I, who died without issue. He continued to reign in all 3 kingdoms for 22 years, a period known as the Jacobean era after him, until his death in 1625 at the age of 58. After the union of the crowns, he based himself in England, the largest of the 3 realms, from 1603, only returning to Scotland once in 1617, and styled himself King of Great Britain and Ireland. He was a major advocate of a single parliament for both England and Scotland. In his reign, the plantation of Ulster and British colonization of the Americas began. At 57 years and 246 days, his reign in Scotland was longer than any of his predecessors. He achieved most of his aims in Scotland but faced great difficulties in England, including the Gunpowder Plot in 1605 and repeated conflicts with the English Parliament. Under James, the golden age of Elizabethan literature and drama continued, with writers such as William Shakespeare, John Donne, Ben Jonson, and Sir Francis Bacon contributing to a flourishing literary culture. James himself was a talented scholar, the author of works such as Daemonologies, 1597, True Law of Free Monarchies, 1598, and Basilicon Doron, 1599. He sponsored the translation of the Bible that was named after him, the Authorized King James Version. Sir Anthony Walden claimed that James had been termed the wisest fool in Christendom, an epithet associated with his character ever since. Since the latter half of the 20th century, however, historians have revised James's reputation and have treated him as a serious and thoughtful monarch.
Childhood. Birth.
James was the only son of Mary, Queen of Scots, and her second husband, Henry Stuart, Lord Darnley. Both Mary and Darnley were great-grandchildren of Henry VII of England through Margaret Tudor, the older sister of Henry VIII. Mary's rule over Scotland was insecure, for both she and her husband, being Roman Catholics, faced a rebellion by Protestant noblemen. During Mary's and Darnley's difficult marriage, Darnley secretly allied himself with the rebels and conspired in the murder of the Queen's private secretary, David Rizzio, just 3 months before James's birth. James was born on June 19, 1566 at Edinburgh Castle, and as the eldest son and heir apparent of the monarch automatically became Duke of Rothesay and Prince and Great Steward of Scotland. He was baptized Charles James on December 17, 1566 in a Catholic ceremony held at Stirling Castle. His godparents were Charles IX of France, represented by John, Count of Brienne, Elizabeth I of England, represented by the Earl of Bedford, and Emmanuel Philibert, Duke of Savoy, represented by Ambassador Philibert du Croc. Mary refused to let the Archbishop of St. Andrews, whom she referred to as a parky priest, spit in the child's mouth, as was then the custom. The English guests were offended by the subsequent entertainment, which was devised by Frenchman Bastien Pages and depicted them as satyrs with tails. James's father, Darnley, was murdered on February 10, 1567 at Kirkhofield, Edinburgh, perhaps in revenge for Rizzio's death. James inherited his father's titles of Duke of Albany and Earl of Ross. Mary was already unpopular, and her marriage on May 15, 1567 to James Hepburn, 4th Earl of Bothwell, who was widely suspected of murdering Darnley, heightened widespread bad feeling towards her. In June 1567, Protestant rebels arrested Mary and imprisoned her in Lochleven Castle. She never saw her son again. She was forced to abdicate on July 24, 1567 in favor of the infant James and to appoint her illegitimate half-brother, James Stuart, Earl of Moray, as regent.
Regencies.
The care of James was entrusted to the Earl and Countess of Mar, to be conserved, nursed, and upreared in the security of Stirling Castle. James was crowned King of Scots at the age of 13 months at the Church of the Holy Rood, Stirling, by Adam Bothwell, Bishop of Orkney, on July 29, 1567. The sermon at the coronation was preached by John Knox. In accordance with the religious beliefs of most of the Scottish ruling class, James was brought up as a member of the Protestant Church of Scotland. The Privy Council selected George Buchanan, Peter Young, Adam Erskine, lay Abbot of Cambuskenneth, and David Erskine, lay Abbot of Treburg, as James's preceptors or tutors. As the young king's senior tutor, Buchanan subjected James to regular beatings but also instilled in him a lifelong passion for literature and learning. Buchanan sought to turn James into a God-fearing, Protestant king who accepted the limitations of monarchy, as outlined in his treatise De Jure Regni Apud Scotos. In 1568 Mary escaped from her imprisonment at Lochleven Castle, leading to several years of sporadic violence. The Earl of Moray defeated Mary's troops at the Battle of Langside, forcing her to flee to England, where she was subsequently imprisoned by Elizabeth. On January 23, 1570, Moray was assassinated by James Hamilton of Bothwell. The next regent was James's paternal grandfather, Matthew Stewart, 4th Earl of Lennox, who a year later was carried fatally wounded into Stirling Castle after a raid by Mary's supporters. His successor, the Earl of Mar, took a vehement sickness, and died on October 28, 1572 at Stirling. Mar's illness, wrote James Melville, followed a banquet at Dalkeith Palace given by James Douglas, 4th Earl of Morton. Morton, who was elected to Mar's office, proved in many ways the most effective of James's regents, but he made enemies by his rapacity. He fell from favor when the Frenchman Esm Stewart, Seer d'Aubigny, first cousin of James's father Lord Darnley, and future Earl of Lennox, arrived in Scotland and quickly established himself as the first of James's powerful male favourites. Morton was executed on June 2, 1581, belatedly charged with complicity in Lord Darnley's murder. On August 8, James made Lennox the only duke in Scotland. Then 15 years old, the king was to remain under the influence of Lennox for about 1 more year.
Rule in Scotland.
Although a Protestant convert, Lennox was distrusted by Scottish Calvinists, who noticed the physical displays of affection between favourite and king and alleged that Lennox went about to draw the king to Carnalest. In August 1582, in what became known as the Ruthven Raid, the Protestant Earls of Gowrie and Angus lured James into Ruthven Castle, imprisoned him, and forced Lennox to leave Scotland. After James was liberated in June 1583, he assumed increasing control of his kingdom. He pushed through the Black Acts to assert royal authority over the Kirk, and denounced the writings of his former tutor Buchanan. Between 1584 and 1603, he established effective royal government and relative peace among the lords, ably assisted by John Maitland of Thirlestane, who led the government until 1592. An 8-man commission, known as the Octavians, brought them control over the ruinous state of James's finances in 1596, but it drew opposition from vested interests. It was disbanded within a year after a riot in Edinburgh, stoked by anti-Catholicism, led the court to withdraw to Linlithgow temporarily. One last Scottish attempt against the king's person occurred in August 1600, when James was apparently assaulted by Alexander Ruthven, the Earl of Gowrie's younger brother, at Gowrie House, the seat of the Ruthvens. Since Ruthven was run through by James's page John Ramsay and the Earl of Gowrie was himself killed in the ensuing fracas, there were few surviving witnesses. Given his history with the Ruthvens, and that he owed them a great deal of money,